Alright, hello everyone. So, now that my Doom level is over, I wanted to share some of the experiences that I went through, and a couple of the things that I learned that I didn't easily find in tutorials. I'll have a couple of good tutorials that I did follow, listed below, but I also wanted to take the time to explain some of the things that would have made my life a lot easier. So, to start, one of the things that's the most embarrassing is, halfway through the video you could tell that I was running out of space, and I had thought that network just meant the overall ability to handle your level as a whole. The button I didn't recognize was the fact that if you just click over to campaign, it does force it to be a single player map, but mine was intended to be anyway. And I had never really looked through these menu items. In fact, I hadn't seen any of these. And removing the network cap gave me like 20% more object room than I thought I had originally. So, while that may seem incredibly obvious, I wasn't aware of it, and I think it's something that should be pointed out. Another thing is that a lot of the rules in DOOM Snapmap seem to not exist. There is the tutorial mode that lets you do basic movement and even complicated logic chains, but they don't really go into the more finite rules, like the fact that you can only have 12 AI active in a scene at any moment. If you watch the video, you see that at the very end of my fight, there's supposed to be, 2 nests that are spawning a dozen enemies throughout the entire fight. Well, I had a problem where, for some reason, they were never spawning, and I thought it was because the room adjacent to it just had too many enemies, and maybe there was not enough room to have all that logic going on. Well, as it turns out, after digging through the forums, you can only have 12 enemies on at a time, and that the way to avoid that is generally to either lock down doors, so you have to kill enemies first, or have them not appear until you enter the room and then immediately have them disappear. So when I run past this door, they all disappear so that the next room can load. A third thing I learned that came with a few sub-lessons with it was about the blocking volumes and the skyboxes. See, I wanted to make my map based on Mars because a lot of Doom campaigns open with that, and I thought it would be kind of interesting to do it. I did not realize that while there are a lot of hell props, and there are like 3 different variants on space station props, there was almost nothing for Mars. The only way to do that was to use blocking volumes all over the walls and then put a skybox on them that made it look like Mars. Because I need to know if I even can do Mars or not. If I can't, I need to drop this all together. Oh, that changes a lot. There it is. Holy crap. But on top of that, the only way to make, stone that looked like the dirt of Mars was also to edit this blocking volumes for that. The biggest issue is that nothing is willing to spawn on those. You have to have them spawn, then have them teleport in. You can kind of see it here, and it's not the most elegant solution, but enemies actually handled walking on this so poorly that the only monster that was willing to even be valuable was the imp, because they shoot long-range weapons, versus the pinkies who got trapped running in a small circle forever. So another thing that probably seems incredibly obvious, but if you don't know it, then you don't know it, and it makes everything significantly harder, is if you're using a controller, I'm not sure what the functionality for that is, but a mouse and keyboard, when you want to manipulate an object, it seems like at a first glance all you do is you just move your camera around, and therefore it moves basically in a sphere around your face. And while there's a couple of buttons that change whether that changes the scale or not of the object is helpful, one thing that's incredibly important is the 5-button macro it requires in order to get anything to actually move, because you have to be holding the object, then holding shift, then pressing X, and that cycles through the 5 different variants that you can spin it on, which I didn't even realize for the first, 10 hours of building. So everything was clunkily put together until I realized you could snap things together, and I never once saw a tutorial that explained how much easier it would be if you knew all these button combinations. The last thing that I discovered, which is kind of a gee-whiz piece of information, is that if you're hovering in the air and you're not actually selecting anything, then you get to go into the room's options, and the room options can help you change some of the facts that you didn't like about it. See, one problem I kept running into with the snap map is that the rooms were so particularly designed, one room, pulsating with green ooze, and then the other one crackling with red lightning. It was hard to have a flow if that room's shape was what I needed to finish the level. Well, when you're in the room's editor, you can change if it's got props on the walls or the ground or the ceiling, but you can also change some of the audio and the lighting of the room altogether, regardless of what the camera is up to. It actually took me pretty much till the 11th hour to find that out, so a lot of the design is still stuck prior to that knowledge, and I think I would have saved a lot of time had I known that in the first place. These were just some of my observations while I was going through the Snapmap editor, and hopefully you learned something that will save you a lot of time that I didn't. And if there's anything else that I didn't point out, please leave a comment below, and thanks for watching.